The night begins like any other, a low hum under everything. The kind of sound your ears polish out until it becomes the house's secret heartbeat. Outside, the world exhales. Street lamps pool gold on wet asphalt. Somewhere far off, a dog remembers it is evening and yips once before deciding the night is not worth waking for. You drift into that hush, safe, warm, half dreaming, and that is exactly where I like you, balanced between waking and sleeping. Where stories sink roots deepest. I found the archive on a rain-slick morning, in a cardboard crate that smelled of old ink and coffee and the kind of dust that remembers shoes. The crate had no return address. Inside were journals threaded with tape, Polaroids with the corners chewed away, a battered field recorder, and 7 labeled cassettes, spidery handwriting. One title for each: Encounters, Interviews. The kind of cold evidence that makes grown people stop rehearsing explanations. Someone had gathered these things like a collector of storms. They brought them to me with the quiet hope that whatever had once been too loud to tell could be listened to instead. Slowly, carefully, like seeding a dream, tonight. I want you to lie back and let me guide you through that crate. Not to wake you, but to unspool small, steady threads, a trucker's tape that ends with metal singing, a fisherman's log with coordinates that refuse to stay still, a child's drawing of a face made of light. These are not sensationalized headlines. They are weathered voices, recorded in kitchens, in watchtowers, and beside cold radio dishes. Voices that remember things they do not want to forget and things they cannot explain. The first thing you will notice is the sound. Not the static, that's expected, but the way silence learns to bend. On some tapes, silence becomes a shape, an articulated presence that sits just behind the recorded words. On others, the air itself seems to hum in a harmonic the human ear only understands when the rest of the world has closed its windows. Once, a late-night dispatcher in a town that maps to little else but a single blinking highway light told me it was the wrong kind of quiet, like the sky had swallowed an engine and hadn't decided whether to cough it back up yet. His voice is hoarse on the tape. He pauses to clear it and then laughs, the nervous sound that carries no humor. When I play that tape for you later, listen for the pause. It is where the world tilts. People who record encounters are ordinary. A woman who clips coupons at a kitchen table. A mechanic who knows the names of engines like Bible verses. A boy who sleeps with his window open and counts the satellites. They are not looking for miracles. They are looking for reasons. Why did the compass in my truck spin like a toy? Why did the cattle go quiet the week the light lay over the pasture? Why did 3 minutes of my life vanish and leave my watch wound to a time I do not remember? The archive collects questions, never tidy answers. It keeps corners of nights where explanations will not settle. I don't mean to frighten you. The tone of these stories is not always terror. There's a lullaby quality to them, the soft retelling of an uncanny thing, spoken like a confession to a trusted friend. In one tape, an elderly astronomer named Dr. Leela confesses she now keeps a jar of moonlight. She says this with the matter-of-factness of someone who has spent too many nights mapping dust, and thought it less peculiar to keep a sample than to throw it away. Her voice is clinical and kind. She will tell you about a hum in the dish, a modulation between frequencies that did not belong to any known object. She will tell you how the hum tasted. Try to imagine that, of iron and rain. Listen and feel the slow bloom of wonder. That's the cupboard shadow in all of these tapes, all braided with a hairline of fear. The encounters come in different textures. There are lights that move like a shoal of fish, then separate and regroup as if rehearsing some geometry. There are objects that hover and leave a coppery scent on clothes. There are machines that, when they approach, seem to rearrange time, folding it into a smaller, more intense thing where hours compress to minutes, and memories lose the padding that comfort usually provides. In one police log, a sheriff writes of an hour that felt like a dent, an honest phrase. The page seems to buckle when you touch it. People write that phrase a lot when they cannot find better words. The recordings carry a kind of intimacy you do not get from lead-lit studio panels. On one reel, a trucker named Jonas speaks into the recorder at 2 a.m, rain tapping glass like a metronome. He tells a story about a light that kept pace with his cab down Route 7. staying exactly 3 miles behind, never closer, never farther. Like a steady companion refusing to be summoned. Jonas laughs softly on the tape as if he is revisiting a private joke with himself. Then, the tape picks up something else, a vibration in the air. Not a word. Not noise as we know it, but a pattern that makes the hairs along the back of your neck line up like soldiers. Jonas says, "It felt like someone had set a hand on my forehead and left it there." The recording ends with his breath, slow and measured, and in the space after you can almost feel the warmth at the back of the throat where memory sits. There are also absences. Some tapes trail off mid-sentence. Some return with an inch of silence and no sense of what happened. A camera will capture a ripple on the horizon that looks like a second horizon. And when analysts pull the frames and stitch them together, the geometry folds inward on itself. People find that hard to explain and hard to forget. In their journals they draw what they saw, and the drawings make you look twice. Because they look like maps to a place you might find. If you followed a weather pattern into the dark, crop circles that are not circles. Symbols that repeat like a language's punctuation, tonight. Before you fall all the way into sleep, allow the first tape to spool. Imagine the soft click of the player, the tiny whir as the reel begins. Imagine a room dimly lit by a bedside lamp. The light's soft enough that the shadows have room to breathe. In that room sits a recorder, fingers smudged and patient. I press play. The hiss comes first, then a voice, thin with fatigue and steady with insistence. Saying the name of a road that might not appear on any map you keep in your head. The voice says, plainly, it came over the trees and there was a singing that was not music. Then, the tape folds into a different sound. A chorus of tones that do not belong to any instrument, and then a child's voice, small and precise, whispers a single sentence into the dark. The sentence is not a sentence so much as a punctuation. It looks like the moon is crying. The recorder catches along. Low tone after that, a note like a bell dropped into a well. And in the bell's fading you feel, briefly, sharply, that you are being observed, not with malice, but with a curiosity that feels dangerously intimate. That is where I stop the tape, outside. The night holds its breath. The dog has resumed sleeping. The hum under the house is patient as ever. Inside the crate, the reels wait, their magnetic skin full of other nights. I slide the cassette back into its sleeve and trace the label with a fingertip, feeling the indentations of the years. There are 7 of them, 7 voices mounting like a tide. If you still have your eyes closed, keep them closed for a beat longer. Tune the world to the space between heartbeats and listen for the shape of silence. When you are ready to follow, the first reel will be waiting. A night stitch from light and a voice that says a single impossible thing and then stops. The kind of voice you do not forget. I press the recorder again, and the needle finds the groove. The hush deepens, and somewhere beyond the edges of sleep, something answers. The cassette is marked with a single word, Jonas. The handwriting leans as though it was written in a moving vehicle, jagged and uneven, but firm. The paper label is peeling at the corner, stained with what looks like coffee. Whoever wrote it did so quickly, as if the act of writing was only a means of trapping the memory before it could escape. I thread the tape into the recorder, press play, and let the room slip into the hush of rain on tin. Jonas' voice comes through first, gravelly, low, softened by years of long roads and longer silences. He speaks like a man who knows how to carry conversations with himself during 1,000-mile drives. Name's Jonas K. Been driving rigs since I was 19. Seen everything this country's got to throw at a man. Storms, drunks, deer bigger than life. But this, he pauses. The tape catches the crack of his knuckles. This wasn't anything I could put in the logbook. The soundscape is vivid. You can hear the windshield wipers dragging across glass, the low hum of tires on asphalt. He describes it carefully, as though setting a scene for someone who might not believe him otherwise. It was about 2:30 a.m. Route 7, stretch no one takes unless they got cargo that can't wait. My trailer was loaded with steel beams. Heavy haul, steady ride. Rain combing down steady. I was tired but not tired enough to drift. Then, I noticed a light. At first he thinks it's a state trooper, or maybe another trucker's high beams. But no, the light hovers 3 miles back. Exactly, glowing white against the wet black road. It kept the same distance, Jonas whispers, his voice softening as though afraid the tape itself might give him away. Didn't matter if I slowed down or sped up, that glow stayed right there, like it was keeping me company. I got that prickly feeling, the kind where your skin knows something your mind don't want to admit. The tape crackles. In the silence, rain patters harder. Jonas swears he rolled down the window, stuck his arm into the rain, and waved his flashlight toward the glow. No response. No horn. No flashback. No engine sound. Just silence, and then the singing started, he mutters. His voice is different now, thin, almost reverent. He explains it wasn't music, not the kind you could hum back. It was like the road itself had found a throat, a vibration that crawled up through the steering wheel, through his chest, into his jawbone. A tone so low it lived more in the bones than the ears. I felt it right here. He taps his temple, like someone had rested a hand against my forehead. Not pushing, just there. The tape begins to distort. The hum creeps into the recording, as though whatever sound Jonas described had bled into the magnetic strip itself. It warbles, grows louder, then softens again like waves drawing back from a shore. Jonas doesn't stop talking. The light pulled closer. 2 miles, 1 mile, still behind me. The tone changed, like it was answering something. I swear to you, I felt my heart sink with it, like it had rewired my pulse. My dashboard clock skipped, 3 minutes gone. Just like that. He laughs. But there's no humor in it. The laugh is sharp, cut with fear and awe. I ain't crazy. I've hauled loads all over 48 states, and I ain't never seen nothing like this. But I'll tell you something, when it finally broke off, when that light lifted up over the tree line and disappeared, I missed it. He doesn't explain why. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe the singing sky left him with a longing. The way a half-remembered dream makes you want to roll over and find the rest of it again. The tape ends with the soft itch of his breath. Then silence. But the silence is not empty. Listen long enough, and you'll hear it too, faint, like the afterimage of a star. A low harmonic that seems to hum inside your chest even after the reel clicks to a stop. And as I place the cassette back into its sleeve, a question curls at the edge of thought. Quiet but insistent. If the sky can sing, who's it singing to? The second cassette is different from the first. Where Jonas' tape smelled faintly of grease and old coffee, this one carries something stranger. Harder to place, like damp paper that is spent too long in a cellar. The label is ruined, smudged into illegibility except for one surviving word. Scratched into the paper like a plea not to be erased. Children. I load the tape, press play, and brace myself for silence. But what comes first isn't silence. It's laughter high, bright, unsteady laughter. The kind that fills schoolyards and late summer evenings when fireflies drift like sparks. From a hidden flame, several voices overlap, rising and falling, boys and girls. Their words aren't clear at first, muffled as though recorded from a distance, carried on a breeze. Then the sound sharpens. Look, it's coming back. No, higher. Don't touch it, you'll scare it away. Their voices are urgent but innocent, tinted with wonder. A man's voice interrupts, weary but careful, like someone trying to herd energy into order. All right, calm down. One at a time. Tell me what you saw. The children fall into an almost reverent hush. A girl speaks first. Her voice is small, but certain. It wasn't an airplane. It was too quiet. Airplanes roar. This was like when you put your ear on a seashell. A boy follows, his tone edged with defiance. The way kids speak when they expect disbelief. It wasn't a star either. Stars don't move like that. It went zigzag, fast like it was playing tag with us. Another voice. Barely a whisper. It looked at me. The tape warbles. There's a brief distortion, like the recorder itself shivered. When the sound steadies again, the man's voice returns, a little more strained. Looked at you? How do you mean? The child answers with the clarity only children possess, like when a teacher calls your name. You just know. A silence follows, heavy and waiting. Then, faint in the background, A sound creeps into the recording. Not laughter, not wind. A tone, high and thin, threading through the air like glass being stroked. The children gasp. Some giggle nervously, others murmur in awe. Do you hear it? One boy asks. It's singing. A girl replies, almost dreamily. The tape fuzzes again, carrying static that swells like a tide. Through it, one child begins to hum along with the tone, perfectly in tune. Her voice is steady, unwavering, like she knows the melody. The man interrupts sharply now, his calm cracking. Stop. Don't do that. Don't hum with it. The tape cuts to silence. When sound returns, the laughter is gone. The children are quiet, subdued. One girl says, flatly, it didn't want us to be scared. That's why it sang. Another boy whispers, it'll come back tonight. The man breathes hard into the recorder, as if trying to decide whether to turn it off. Instead, he mutters something the microphone almost doesn't catch. They're too young to know what's safe to invite. The tape ends, but as the reel clicks still, I realize something unsettling. In the quiet of my own room, beneath the whir of the player, a faint hum lingers, the same high, glassy tone. The same one the children had followed like a lullaby. I tell myself it's only in my head, an echo of their story. And yet, it feels nearer than that. The third cassette lies beneath a scatter of Polaroids. Each photo is blurred, as though the camera's hand had trembled. But the horizon is unmistakable, an endless sheet of black water, broken only by the reflection of something not meant to be there, a glow. Like a lantern hung above the sea, only brighter, stranger. A live dot, the tape itself bears a label in block letters. The fisherman. I press play dot at first. All I hear is the sea, the eternal, patient sound of waves folding into one another. Then comes the rasp of a cigarette lighter, the drag of smoke, and finally a voice. It is the voice of a man worn thin by salt and solitude. My name's Ewan Holt, he begins, his tone blunt, like a man used to speaking only when necessary. Been working these waters 35 years. I know what belongs here, and I know what doesn't. What I saw that night didn't belong. He explains how he had taken his small boat out farther than usual. The night was calm, the tide steady. Round midnight, his net snagged, not on rock, not on wreckage, but on something smooth and unyielding, as if he had hooked the very skin of the ocean. When I lean over, he says, voice thick with disbelief even in retelling, there was a glow under the water. Not plankton, not a ship's light. This was deep, too deep to reach with any net, but it lit the waves from below, like the ocean had swallowed the moon. The tape crackles. A gust of wind rattles the microphone. Ewan continues, slower now. It moved. The glow shifted beneath me, wide as a football field. The nets tore free like they'd never been there. And then it rose, not fast, not like something chastened, more like it wanted me to see it. His voice breaks. He coughs, draws on his cigarette, exhales. It was a dome, a silver dome, bigger than any vessel I've ever laid eyes on. The surface shimmered, like scales made of glass. No rivets, no seams, just smooth, alive somehow. It pushed up through the waves until it hovered there, dripping salt water, casting the sea in white fire. For a moment, the tape captures nothing but the sound of him breathing, steady and shaken. Then came the sound, he whispers. The recorder almost refuses to catch it. But there it is, faint, distant, a low drone, pulsing like a whale's song slowed to eternity. It reverberates in the bones, in the teeth. It is not human. It is not mechanical. It is something older, larger, patient. I drop to my knees, Ewan admits. Not because I wanted to, but because the sound pushed me down. My chest felt like it would split open. The damn boat creaked like it was gonna break in two. The tape hisses, and then I saw eyes. The sentence sits heavy, without explanation. He does not describe them fully. He only says, they weren't looking at me. They were looking through me, like I was nothing more than a page in a book it had already read 1,000 times. His voice lowers to a near whisper. I blacked out. Woke up hours later, boat adrift. The dome was gone, but my compass spins to this day. Can't keep north, not since that night. The recording stutters. For a brief second, the ocean sound changes, unnatural, reversed, as though the sea itself were folding inward. A distortion curls at the edge of the audio, sharp enough to make the speakers buzz. Then, silence. The tape ends. I sit staring at the Polaroids, at the faint glow smeared across the horizon. One of the photographs shows something stranger, the water bending upward, curved unnaturally, like a mirror catching light. The fisherman had captured more than he knew, and though the tape is silent now, my ears still ring with that low, patient drone. The envelope is thin, nearly translucent. The paper within is crinkled, edges brown with age. The ink fading but still sharp enough to carry weight. Written across the top of the first page, in careful, slanted handwriting, observations, anomalous signal sequence. But it is the circled line further down that makes my chest tighten. The hum tasted of iron and rain. The cassette beside it is labeled in steady block letters, Dr. Leela. When I press play, the tape greets me with the hollow echo of a large room, the kind where every sound has to travel before it rests. Then, a woman's voice enters, calm, deliberate, with the steady cadence of a teacher. My name is Dr. Leela Vey. I have been with the Deep Sky Ray for 18 years. I've pointed our dishes at pulsars, quasars, and static so old it predates the world. Nothing has unsettled me until this. The tape crackles. For a moment, a strange harmonic seeps in, too faint to be real, too steady to be accident. It began as a modulation between channels, she explains. Not random noise, not a star's pulse. It was rhythmic, it was attentive. Her tone remains clinical, but underneath it lies something more, awe, fear. Reverence braided together, we calibrated again and again. Same result, a frequency hovering just below human hearing. When amplified, it resolved into a vibration that felt physical. My colleagues described it as pressure in the chest. But to me, she hesitates. Papers shuffle near the microphone. To me, it carried taste. She lets the silence stretch, as though daring the listener to dismiss her. Then, with quiet certainty, she continues, it was metallic, cold, like iron pennies on the tongue, and wet, sharp, like the air after a storm. It lingered for hours. The tape stutters, a faint hum rising in the background, almost inaudible, but insistent. Dr. Leela speaks again, softer now. 2 nights later, I tried something foolish. I left a jar outside, under the dish, during the transmission. An ordinary mason jar. I don't know what I expected. Perhaps I wanted proof, something I could hold. She laughs, though it is hollow, unsettled. When I opened the jar the next morning, there was light inside. Faint, silvery, like trapped moonlight. No source, no reflection, just light, suspended, as though it had been poured in like water. She clears her throat. I've kept that jar sealed ever since. When I look at it too long, the taste returns, iron, rain, and a pull behind the eyes, as if something on the other end is aware of me. Watching back, the tape warps. For several seconds, the hum overwhelms her voice, a rising, layered chord that feels alive. Then her words cut through again, sharp, deliberate. This was not interference. This was not chance. This was intent. The recording falters, stops, then resumes with a different timbre. Her voice more hurried now, the professional restraint stripped away. They know we're listening. She whispers, the signal shifted last night. It addressed us, not in language, but in cadence, like a question, a summons. There's the sound of glass clinking, perhaps the jar. Then her final words, if you ever hear it for yourself, do not answer. Curiosity is not always a gift. The tape ends abruptly, the click louder than it should be, leaving behind an emptiness that thrums in the bones. I glance at the envelope again, at the circled words written in her hand. The hum tasted of iron and rain. And for the briefest second, I wonder if the taste in my mouth is just suggestion, or something else. Cliffhanger, hypnotic hook for part 5. Underneath Dr. Leela's envelope lies a cracked, leather-bound notebook. The ink inside is frantic, scrawled in bursts, as though written by someone racing against time. On the first page, one phrase repeats again and again. It felt like a dent in the hour. The notebook is cracked with age, its leather cover scarred, the stitching pulling loose at the edges. Inside, the handwriting is erratic, words looped too tightly, ink blotched in sudden floods, as if written in the grip of adrenaline. On the very first page, one phrase repeats like an echo desperate to be heard. It felt like a dent in the hour. The cassette lying atop the journal is labeled in block capitals. Sheriff's Log. I load it into the recorder. The tape begins with the hiss of a cheap microphone, followed by the low, deliberate voice of a man accustomed to official reports. His tone is steady, though each sentence seems to carry a weight he does not want to admit. Sheriff Daniel Rhodes. September 18th, Midnight Patrol, County Road 12. Clear skies, no traffic. Then lights. Not headlights. Not flares. Lights over the pasture, a pause. Papers rustle. His voice tightens. I've seen planes. I've seen flares. These were neither. 3 orbs, white-blue, arranged in a triangle. They hovered low, silent. Cattle in the field went still, dead still. Not a moo, not a shuffle. Like someone had pressed pause. The tape crackles. A strange undertone vibrates faintly beneath his words, as though the magnetic strip itself had remembered something he hadn't intended to record. I stepped out of the cruiser. Radio dispatch. The moment I keyed the mic time, slipped. That's the only way I can put it. 1 second I was looking at the lights. The next, I was back in the driver's seat. My watch read 12:47 a.m., but my logbook still said 12:18. Nearly 30 minutes. Gone. He breathes heavily into the recorder. The mask of calm peeling away. It felt wrong. Not like sleep. Not like fainting. Like the hour itself had been dented. Bent inward. You ever seen a car after a wreck? How the frame folds in a way it was never meant to. That's what time felt like. Like I'd been shoved into a moment that no longer fit. A long silence follows. When he speaks again, his tone has shifted, softer, almost pleading. There was something else. When the lights vanished, the cattle scattered. But on the ground, in the field, the grass was bent in perfect circles. And in the center, my flashlight found a figure, human-sized, still, like a shadow standing upright. But when I stepped closer, it wasn't a shadow. It was an absence, a cutout of night darker than the night itself. And it moved. The tape warbles. For several seconds, the sheriff's voice is drowned beneath static. But fragments push through, words bent and broken. Watch me. In my head. Not supposed to remember. When the recording clears again, his tone is ragged. I don't know how long it followed me. Maybe minutes. Maybe the rest of the night. I drove until the sun came up, and still the dent was there. Like time itself had been bruised. His voice fades to a whisper. Almost lost in the hiss. If you find this log, don't go near those fields. The hour doesn't belong to us anymore. The tape ends with a hollow click. I stare at the journal. Its later pages are filled with the same phrase, written in darker, heavier ink. The dent never heals, and for a moment, I cannot tell if the silence around me is ordinary silence or the kind that bends, waiting to collapse. Cliffhanger, hypnotic hook for part 6. Beneath the sheriff's journal rests a lone Polaroid. A boy's open window at night. The curtains billow inward though no wind stirs the trees. On the back of the photo, written in a child's hand, the moon was crying. The photograph is small, square, the kind that develops in your hand while the image bleeds through chemicals. It shows a child's bedroom window, curtains lifting inward as though the night itself were stepping inside. No stars, no streetlights, only the pale swell of the moon. On the back of the photo, written in uneven childlike letters, the moon was crying. The cassette beside it is labeled in faint pencil, The Boy's Window. When I press play, the recording hums with the low crackle of a bedside microphone. Then, the voice of a boy, maybe 9 years old, soft and hesitant. The way children speak when they're not sure if they'll be believed. My name's Caleb, he begins. Mom told me to say what I saw. She said it was okay, so here it is. He takes a shaky breath. I was in bed. I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at the moon. It looked different. Like it had water in its eyes. Like it was gonna cry. Then, it did. A pause. The tape catches the faint sound of a child shifting on bedsheets, it dripped. Silver drops. They fell down from the sky, slow, like raindrops in syrup. One landed on my window. It didn't splash. It just stuck. And when I touched it, it was cold, but it lit up my hand. There's a soft gasp. His own, caught on the tape. I think it saw me. Not the moon. The thing behind it. The drops weren't tears. They were messages. The boy's voice falters, but he pushes on, whispering now. As though afraid of being overheard, I could hear something in my head. A voice, not words, just feelings. It said, "Don't be afraid." But then it said something else. It said, "We are already here." The tape warbles, almost bending under its own static. A faint, high-pitched tone leaks into the background. Delicate as glass, but sharp enough to make the air feel thinner, Caleb begins to hum. A slow, tuneless melody. The same tone, but echoed through a child's voice. Then, his mother's voice cuts in sharply. Muffled and panicked. "Caleb, stop! Don't hum with it." The recorder rattles, hurried hands fumbling for the stop button. But not before one last whisper escapes, close to the microphone. Closer than any child's voice should be. It's still at the window. The tape clicks off. I stare at the photograph again. The curtains seem to ripple in my hands, as if the paper itself remembers the wind that wasn't there. And outside, beyond my own window, the moon stares back, pale, swollen, as if holding back a secret it cannot keep much longer. The final cassette is different. The plastic is cracked, the magnetic tape inside warped and brittle as though scorched by heat. Across the spine, in jagged strokes that dig deep into the paper label, is a single word, "Answer." I hesitate before pressing play. Every instinct whispers to leave it untouched, to let silence hold it closed. But the crate has carried me this far, and stories demand endings. Even if the ending doesn't want to be told. The tape begins with static, not the ordinary hiss of old equipment, but something denser, layered, like 1,000 whispers crowding beneath the surface. Slowly, a voice emerges. Not male, not female, not human. The cadence is uneven, phrases stretch thin, as though language itself is an ill-fitting mask. "You heard us. You listened." The recorder groans under the weight of the sound. The voice continues, folding into itself, repeating words as if testing their strength. Singing sky, iron and rain, dent in the hour, the moon crying. It is speaking their words. Jonas, the children, the fisherman, Dr. Leela, the sheriff, the boy at the window. Each phrase stitched from the testimonies, as if the voice had been listening all along. Learning through them. Then, silence. For nearly a full minute, the tape holds nothing, just the low hum of old circuitry. Long enough for me to wonder if the reel is broken. And then, now, the air in the room feels thinner, my lungs straining. The voice deepens, vibrating through the tape, through the speakers, through the bones themselves. "We answered your looking. We answered your dreaming. We answered your silence." The static surges. A tone rises, high and pure, the same note Jonas described on the highway. The same hum the children sang with, the same drone the fisherman heard beneath the waves. It pierces, but it is not cruel. It feels like recognition. We are already here. The phrase lands heavy, inevitable, as though it had been waiting all along. The recorder sputters, distorts, nearly chokes on the sound. For a final, brief instant, another voice breaks through, human, frantic, overlapping the alien cadence. It is Dr. Leela. "Don't answer," she cries. "Do not." The tape cuts. The reel spins to its end. The click that follows is deafening. I sit in the stillness, the crate now empty. The silence around me swollen and alive. And in that silence, I realize something chilling. The tapes were never just records. They were transmissions. A bridge, waiting for someone to complete it. And now, by listening, by following the voices to their end, I have